For many years, the Middle East has been defined by a tense and unspoken arrangement between its two most powerful regional rivals, Iran and Israel. This was not a peace, but rather a carefully managed state of conflict, a shadow war fought through indirect means to avoid the catastrophic consequences of a direct, all-out confrontation. Each side understood the other's strengths and weaknesses, creating a fragile equilibrium that, while violent, prevented a wider regional war. This balance was predicated on both nations leveraging their unique advantages while studiously avoiding a head-on clash that neither was certain it could win without devastating losses. Iran, lacking a conventional military that could match Israel's technological superiority, developed a strategy of asymmetric warfare. It cultivated a network of proxy forces across the region, a so-called axis of resistance. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza became its forward operating bases, armed with Iranian missiles and drones, capable of striking Israel without Tehran's direct fingerprints on the attack. This approach allowed Iran to project power, challenge Israeli security, and maintain a credible deterrent, all while keeping the conflict at arm's length and preserving a degree of plausible deniability, a crucial element in this dangerous geopolitical chess match. On the other side of this equation stood Israel, a nation built on the principle of overwhelming military strength and technological prowess. Israel's strategy relied on deterrence through superior firepower, intelligence, and air power. It conducted targeted assassinations, cyber attacks, and clandestine operations deep within Iranian territory, aiming to disrupt Tehran's nuclear ambitions and degrade its military capabilities from within. This approach was designed to keep Iran on the defensive, constantly looking over its shoulder and unable to consolidate its gains. The Israel Defense Forces became the ultimate guarantor of this strategy, ensuring that any direct move by Iran would be met with a swift and punishing response. This delicate, dangerous dance allowed both nations to pursue their strategic objectives without triggering a full-scale war. Iran could harass Israel and expand its influence through its proxies, while Israel could systematically undermine Iran's long-term strategic projects, particularly its nuclear program. Both sides inflicted pain, but they did so within a set of unwritten rules. The core understanding was that direct state-on-state conflict was the ultimate red line. This long-standing paradigm, however, was fundamentally shattered by the events that unfolded after October 2023, ushering in a new and far more volatile era for the entire region. The long-held rules of engagement in the Middle East were irrevocably broken following the events of October 2023. The brutal attack by Hamas, an Iranian-backed proxy, triggered a massive and decisive Israeli response that went far beyond previous operations. Israel's new doctrine was no longer about containment or mowing the lawn. It became about dismantling the threat posed by Iran's network entirely. This marked a profound strategic shift. Israel decided that the shadow war was no longer sustainable and began a campaign of direct and overt attacks not just on the proxies, but on Iranian military assets and personnel, including those stationed in Syria and even within Iran itself. This new, aggressive posture has put Iran in an incredibly difficult position. For the first time, Tehran is facing direct military consequences for the actions of its allies, and its strategy of plausible deniability has evaporated. Israel's strikes have been precise and damaging, targeting key commanders, advanced weapons depots, and critical infrastructure that Iran had painstakingly built up over decades. The Israeli campaign has effectively called Iran's bluff, demonstrating that Tehran's own forces and territory are now considered legitimate targets. This has exposed the fundamental weakness in Iran's asymmetric strategy. It relied on the assumption that Israel would never risk a direct confrontation. The consequences for Iran have been severe. Its military presence in Syria, once a formidable forward base for threatening Israel, has been systematically degraded. High-ranking officers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have been eliminated in targeted strikes, creating a vacuum of leadership and experience. Furthermore, Israel's willingness to strike inside Iran has shaken the regime, forcing it to confront the vulnerability of its own homeland security. The message from Jerusalem is clear. The era of hiding behind proxies is over, and any aggression will be traced back to its source in Tehran and met with force. This direct conflict has also laid bare the technological and military gap between the two nations. While Iran's drones and missiles pose a threat, Israel's multi-layered air defense systems, combined with its superior air force and intelligence capabilities, have proven highly effective. Iran has found itself on the receiving end of a military power it cannot conventionally match. The escalation has shattered the illusion of Iranian strength that its proxy network was designed to project, leaving the regime weaker and more exposed than it has been in years, fundamentally altering the strategic landscape of the entire Middle East. A central pillar of Iran's regional power has always been its axis of resistance, the network of proxy militias it funds, trains, and arms. However, the conflict that erupted after October 2023 has dealt a devastating blow to this network, leaving many of its key components severely weakened. Hamas, the group that instigated the latest round of violence, has been militarily dismantled in Gaza. Its leadership has been decimated, its infrastructure destroyed, and its ability to function as a coherent fighting force has been all but eliminated. For Iran, this represents the loss of a crucial and highly motivated partner on Israel's southern border, a proxy that is now unable to exert any significant pressure. Similarly, Hezbollah in Lebanon, long considered the crown jewel of Iran's proxy empire, has been significantly constrained. While it possesses a massive arsenal of rockets, the group has been hesitant to engage in a full-scale war with Israel, knowing the immense destruction it would bring upon Lebanon. Israel's punishing retaliatory strikes along the border have degraded Hezbollah's capabilities and forced its fighters away from the frontier. The group now faces a difficult choice: risk its own destruction for the sake of its Iranian patron, or preserve its power within Lebanon. This has made Hezbollah a less reliable and more cautious ally for Iran. With its primary partners in Gaza and Lebanon either neutralized or deterred, Iran has increasingly turned to its ally in Yemen, the Houthis. The Houthis have demonstrated a willingness to attack international shipping in the Red Sea and launch long-range missiles and drones toward Israel in a show of solidarity. However, their effectiveness is limited by geography and military capability. The vast distance to Israel makes their attacks easier to intercept, and their actions have drawn a robust international naval response that has targeted their launch sites and capabilities. While they can create disruption, the Houthis cannot fundamentally alter the military balance or provide Iran with the strategic leverage it has lost elsewhere. The degradation of its proxy network leaves Iran more isolated than ever before. The very strategy that allowed it to project power without risking direct war has now become its greatest liability. Its allies are either broken, hesitant, or too distant to be effective. This strategic isolation means that Iran must now confront Israel's military might largely on its own, without the buffer of its powerful proxies. The axis of resistance is fractured, and Tehran's ability to challenge Israel indirectly has been dramatically curtailed, further tilting the regional balance of power in Israel's favor. Faced with a newly assertive Israel and a weakened network of allies, the Iranian regime finds itself in a strategic corner with dangerously few options. The direct attacks on its territory and military personnel have shattered its long-held sense of immunity, creating a profound dilemma. Responding with force risks a full-scale war with a technologically superior adversary, a conflict that Iran is ill-equipped to win and that could lead to the regime's collapse. The Iranian leadership is acutely aware that a major confrontation could expose its conventional military weaknesses and potentially trigger widespread domestic unrest from a populace already weary of economic hardship and political repression. However, the alternative of not responding is equally perilous for the regime. A failure to retaliate against direct Israeli strikes projects an image of weakness, both to its enemies and, crucially, to its own people and remaining allies. The Islamic Republic's legitimacy is built on a narrative of defiance and resistance against Israel and the West. If it is seen as incapable of defending its own sovereignty and personnel, this foundational myth crumbles. This could embolden internal opposition and erode the loyalty of its hardline supporters, who demand a strong response to what they see as humiliating attacks on the nation's pride. This predicament leaves Iran's leaders walking a tightrope. Their attempts at retaliation have been carefully calibrated to be symbolic rather than truly damaging, designed to save face without provoking a massive Israeli counter-escalation. Yet, even these limited actions have often been military failures. with missile and drone barrages largely intercepted by Israel's sophisticated air defenses. Each failed attack only serves to underscore Iran's military inferiority and deepen its strategic bind. The regime is trapped. It cannot afford to fight, but it also cannot afford to look like it is backing down from a fight. Ultimately, the balance of power in the Middle East has decisively shifted. The old paradigm of a shadow war has been replaced by a direct confrontation that Iran is losing. Israel, having abandoned its previous restraint, has successfully called Iran's bluff and exposed the vulnerabilities of its asymmetric strategy. With its proxies weakened and its own military capabilities outmatched, Iran's options are severely limited. It can no longer effectively challenge Israel without risking its own survival. The result is a new regional reality where Israel holds a clear and demonstrable military advantage, forcing a weakened Iran into a defensive posture of damage control and survival.